What is good, everyone? A-Rock Oakley back for Building Wedge Part 10. We've made it a long way, and we have learned quite a bit about the deck and have gone through a bunch of iterations. So, to kind of give a try and be brief recap of the building of this as we're building it through the spoiler season so we could start to get some reps and understand what are the strengths, what are some of the pain points, and maybe even, understanding more about what matchups we may run into and how to navigate them. And now that we kind of have that and we understand what cards have been good, there have been a lot of cards that also have led us to other cards that we need to keep our eyes on. And yeah, I think that part of this whole building the process has been just so fun and enjoyable. I mean, we were high on stay on target for a while, but then recognized that for a cause I believe in became a little bit better. We were really big into Fleet Lieutenant, and now we're starting to see the resurgence of Leia Organa and that 4 HP, which we'll talk about here in a moment. That part of it is very strong and exactly what we want to be doing. So we're starting to really see this deck mold. And now I think where this deck goes is that we have to understand how it is going to actually compete into what the meta will be for set 4 and going forward. I think it's a very aggressive deck that can get under a lot of decks where they might be one action away from doing their thing, but it doesn't matter. You just hit them with a Falcon for 10 to 11 or 12 damage, or a Rebel Assault that does 15 damage out of nowhere. So that is something that this deck kind of offers, that if you go unchecked you might be the fastest deck in the format, but you also have the ability to play a longer game. We are doing insane things on way less resources. So I think that part of where this deck goes is fantastic. And we've run into some really tough matchups, but we have talked a lot about Thermal Oscillator versus Tark Town, and that discussion I think is still going to continue to be ongoing. But what I'm recognizing is that 2 HP does matter, and the less cards does have implications. I think the less cards is really important when you're playing for a cause I believe in. You can run lines that is your pathway to victory in Thermal Oscillator, that is play for a cause, rip the top 4 cards and put them in the discard pile to hopefully see another one, because there's just less fat in the deck. And that play line I think is really good and stuff that we need to just be cognizant of. Plus, it means that we might see more Rebel Assaults when we need them. Some of the resourcing decision in Thermal Oscillator might mean you can resource a 1 for a cause and or a Rebel Assault in the early turns, because the likelihood of seeing them has increased with there being less cards in the deck. Not necessarily very high, but it is something you can hope to expect a little bit more. Now, to give some big boosts to Tarkentown. Tarkentown plays really well into Sentinel ships, plays really well into handling, a ground Piet. So that's really good. I think it plays decently with Daring Raid, which I think is a fantastic card of being able to go face or base, or clean up units. You end up playing more cards like Red 5 and Grey Squadron Y-Wing, and you might even consider a card like Sabine's Masterpiece in a Tarkentown build, because you have a lot of red ships and you can ping, and you still have a decent amount of green ships, so you can green units, so you can get those experiences going. So it does lead to maybe a slightly longer game deck, even though you have less HP, but that epic action can play into it. Now, as we talked about before, Thermal Oscillator does tend to keep the initiative more. Not having to use that epic action can mean you're able to push a Rebel Assault to start a turn more often, and giving them less of a chance to interact with you. And I think that part has led me to be very high on Thermal Oscillator. I still think the Tarkentown version is very good, but this is where I'm going to be sticking for a while in the differences of those two builds. And this is streamlined and feels very streamlined to what I am hoping to test more. And as I start to understand the meta a lot more, we will make adjustments to the main board, to the sideboard, and going forward. Um, one big question that has been asked is when to put our pilots on the ground. And I think you can recognize more moments where if you don't have Chewbacca or you might be hoping to get Chewbacca, it might be better to not have your bigs go into a ship on turn one. If it means you can keep initiative, hit for 2 to 3, maybe 4 with the Red Squadron Y Wing, however it works out in your it goes, you can use bigs on the next turn, and if they just kill your ship, you still have a 3/4 that goes on the ground. You're not losing much. A 3/4 on the ground, obviously not the 3/5 goaded stat line that we're looking for, but 3/4 still puts in work. And this is where keeping the um, keeping these pilots to maybe play them on the ground comes up more often than you think. And I think Luke is probably one of those autopilot every single time just because he will go to the ground on his own. Chewbacca is kind of an autopilot unless you're going into the wedge turn and you're just trying to go into 6 resources and just put enough power on the board and diversify your threats. That's where if the Chewbacca ship has already died and I have a second Chewbacca, I'm slamming him as a 5/6 on the ground that can't be defeated or bounced. That is a unit. Chewbacca is very versatile in that way and gives us some great options about going down to the ground. I don't often put like 9 Num or R2 on the ground, but there have been games where 9 Num is my only turn one play, so gotta throw him on the ground and go from there. And just that will happen in games. It's just the variance that you have to live with. But he can become a threat if you happen to say have him and Wedge and maybe a Biggs or a Chewbacca in the later turns on the ground. You can start to do some work and he can start to hit pretty hard. And that's all this deck really needs is just a couple turns where we get some big swings and then we can rally pretty hard with 4 Ks, I believe in. So as you can see, here's our list. Showed in the beginning of the video. You'll see it at the end, link down in the description for this. Not much has changed as far as the main board goes. There's still a lot of testing to be done. Still really liking Red 3 as a not a turn 2 play unless it's your only turn 2 play. Looking to, you know, play this as a pseudo anthem effect in the later turns that maybe it allows for them to have to make a harder decision on what unit to take out because if they leave the red 3, everything hits harder. And they might have been saving the removal uh, for a Falcon or a suited up Green Squadron A Wing. Now Red 3 takes a lot of that heat, and if it goes unchecked, this card just wins games. So it is always a great option to have, and can make math really great for us. So been loving that, and big thanks to the KTOD Wedge core group that have been talking a lot about that. That definitely got onto our radar. Um, Blue Leader's still great. So yeah, this is the list. I've been loving it. That I think this is the best Rebel Assault deck in the game. This is one of the best 4 Ks I believe in decks in the game, and I think that stands true because of the sheer numbers we can do in these chunky swings that we put decks into situations where a 4 Ks into 4 Ks it will be more than enough to finish a game, and they will eventually take out our units, but you only need 1, maybe 2 attacks from some of these units to make 4 Ks very much lethal. So that's an awesome place to be. Now, one of the cool talking points that we've had a lot has been surrounding Gorilla Attack Pod. This becomes 4 Ks number 5, 4 and 5, and this thing can be piloted. So think about that for a second. If on a turn you play this hit for 4, on the next turn you hit for a lot more with a lot of the pilots that we have access to, that's just strong. And I think the 4/6 stat line, very very good. If you when we're beefing up the HP, we're talking about the grit value on this card goes way up, and that's great. So I'm really looking forward to testing this into the control matchups, and again feeling like this is lining up as 4 Ks number 4 and 5, and that's just awesome. Uh, Spec 4 Soldier is a must. Shoot Down, I think, is one of the cards that was spoiled and is a fantastic sideboard card for us. This kind of will. I like this more than Daring Raid because if this is like our Tark Town in the Thermal Oscillator version that continues the race, where we run in a unit, finish up the unit with Shoot Down, and then go to face. Now, cards like Shoot Down and Disabling Fang Fighter and Timely, which we'll get to, will all make For a Cause worse. So you might have to be aware of that. And we're going to see more cards. So, but For a Cause doing 3 damage and giving us selection is still great. 2 damage, it starts to not feel as good. So as long as it's hitting for 3 to 4, it still feels great. Gotta have Disabling Fang Fighter, handles other pilots. Traitorous is still being played. You're going to have to deal with this, and I could see the meta shifting back to where this ends up back in the main board, and this being the only card that isn't a hero card in our main board. So that part um, is to be figured out, and we need to be aware of that. But Disabling Fang Fighter, one of the best cards in for upgrade removal around. I don't think we'd ever be playing Confiscate. I think just being able to have more ships that we can pilot and just keep attacking is much more where we want to be. Timely Reinforcement is a card that I still feel is going to hedge the aggro matchups. When you're facing another space deck, they go to 6 resources, creating 3 2/2s that have Sentinel can save your ships. Now, there's stuff that like Django does, and there's a lot of things that decks can do that might answer this card, but I really do think that, and maybe this isn't a card for Django, but this is a card like into Wedge, putting 2 X-Wing tokens that are 2/2s that are Sentinels when they have a monstrous Falcon and another unit that's going to attack into you, and you just soak damage off of those and attack with your own. That's a really strong playline. And now, if they don't answer it, you just have 4 damage free on the next turn. If not, maybe 6 damage on the next turn. If they've gone to 6 resources and this is something you play, I just think Timely Reinforcements is a card that helps work into this meta. So really, again, loving the list. If you have questions about it, don't hesitate to put some comments down below. Hit me up on Discord, and head on over to KTOD, onto the Botha Network, onto wherever. Find me, A-Rock Oakley. I would love to chat Wedge. Now, I have created Blast in the White. Sorry, guys. I have created this. It's linked in the KTOD Discord. It'll be linked down below as well, where I give some notes on pilots and their numbers. We start with 9 Num, into Biggs, R2, Luke, Chewbacca, and Wedge. Talking about things to be aware of, watching out for open fire, watching out for ping Tarkin Town, watching out for bounce effects, takedowns. Like, what ships do you really want to be looking to pilot, and what ships maybe you just ignore and save those lines to be able to maybe throw bigs on the ground, or who knows? And highlighting how important it can be to go, instead of going turn 1 ship, turn and pilot. And you might want to, if you have Luke or Chewbacca, go turn 1 ship and then maybe attack with it, or if you have initiative, Luke or Chewbacca into it instead of the other playline to blank removal, blank bounce. Especially with Chewbacca, that's probably one of the better lines. Luke still can be very strong to make sure that your unit survives and makes a lot of their removal a lot worse. So hope this sheet helps, and if you have questions about this, again, please don't hesitate to ask. It's just something that I felt was necessary to put together to talk about. One of the main factors is that I say it a bunch. Blue leader often goes without a pilot. That unit is just a threat, full stop. It just does amazing work on the early turns, in the later turns, and it often doesn't need a pilot to do really good things. Even if I have it as a 5/3 on the ground after it takes out something, or 5/2, or whatever it ends up being, I don't often want Wedge to go into that chip on the Wedge flip turn. I would rather just put Wedge as a unit next to him and hit for 3, and now they have a 5/2 and a 3/6 to deal with, probably with some space units that are also threatening in a different way. So again, that's the diversifying our threats that we're talking about here. So I truly think that Wedge has a lot of play. It has a lot of amazing options because when we go to the edit the deck, it's like the long list of cards that are at our disposal from metal ceremonies and cards that we've talked about during raids to, who knows, maybe we go for a few more upgrades like Heroic Resolve. I know somebody was talking about a targeting computer. Ryan was talking about a targeting computer combo with some non-rebel cards, and it's like, let's do it. Let's see if this can work. I do know dorsal turret was talked about to handle some big space units, so we could attack into stuff and just defeat those units without having to deal with it. Might be a great Piet counter of running in, put this on an X-wing, run it into Devastator to get their Sentinel ship. Yeah, it takes a few actions, but demands an answer. And so there's some options there. Then the other card that I was looking at was where you at? Let's go to okay. This card I like kind of like is Focus Fire. I just kept reading it when I was opening packs the other day, and I was like, this could be really good. This could be really good, but you have to establish more units, and it it's only across arena, so it's only in the same arena. So that's the part where I think it doesn't fully win. And yeah, and then what was the other one? Assault? That's not how you spell assault. Wow, typing. Not tandem. Lightspeed assault. So this can be a pretty insane play where you sacrifice your one of your ships to make sure that it finishes off their ship, and then they have to deal with a bunch of indirect damage on a bigger ship. And it costs two, so it's cheap. So I think that that's kind of what we're looking at is finding more cheap cards that can work with us. I don't know if this is real, but I just want it to be on our radar for maybe let's figure it out. Let's do that together. So if you think of some cards that maybe I haven't talked about yet in these 10 videos, but definitely going forward, let's have that discussion. May look to do some live streaming of some games here soon, so be on the lookout. I'll be in the KTOD Discord for sure, and maybe some other ones. So um, yeah, I think that's what I got. Wedge is looking absolutely amazing, and I'm just loving this deck. Oh, we didn't talk about Leia too much, but Leia's gas. 4 toughness, restore 1. Comes up a lot. Let's do it. I mean, Lisa Simpson meme. Come on now. So good. Yeah. Thank you everybody for watching. I have been loving doing this and will continue to put some iterations out and um, let me know what you all think. Stay awesome, everybody. May the force be with you.